Hello, everybody, and welcome to TFT. That's right, Tinfoil Talk, a place where we come together and we talk about conspiracy theories. And today we got a doozy. Last week we covered the Mandela effect, but today we're covering the Illuminati, which is a very interesting group that's been talked about for a long time. And we're going to take a look at it. Is it something that's real? Is it something that's exaggerated? What is it? Maybe that's the question in the end. Because personally, just to start off, I think there's a lot of Illuminati type of groups, but we will get into that deeper today. We do appreciate everybody that's in here with us. Thank you very much. Of course, we have all our links down below. We'd love for you guys to check those out. But the thing that helps us out the most is hitting that share button and letting your families and friends and extended community know what's going on. That would help us out a lot if you would, because this is a live streaming show. So we need more people in here. So please do that for us. I see Scott is in here. I got a huge ass in here as well. Eric, they're all saying hello. Well, hello to you guys. But before we get going, of course, I always want to come over and say hello to my panel. So hey, George, what's going on, man?
It's going good. It's going good. I'm looking forward to this Illuminati talk.
All right,
The
George, you got to
Illuminati
talk
is
into your
real.
mic, dude. We can't hear you, dude. You got to talk
You
into your
can't
mic.
hear me? How about
No.
this? Good God. Okay, continue.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we can't hear you. You got to go fix that. All of a sudden. But anyway, we also have Thundera with us. Hey, you doing? How's it going, man?
I am spectacular. How is everybody else today? That's the question.
I think it's good, man. It's going to be a rainy day, but it's all right. I'm going to go see a movie. I'm going to go check out the End Game later. Ooh,
Uh oh.
yeah.
Uh
Uh-oh.
oh. Talk about Illuminati. There it is.
Yeah, I guess, huh? Right, right. We could definitely go down that route. But but of course, I'm going to join the rest of the planet and go watch the movie. Because so I don't know. George was telling us it's already over $1 billion already, open weekend. What? That's
Yeah, it's
ridiculous.
crazy. It's crazy. I've been saying this for a while. I think this is the peak of superhero movies. We'll probably never see anything as big as this again.
Probably not. I mean, that's all right. Everything has its peak here or there. But
Yeah.
this movie's kind of lining up to break every record that exists, right?
Yeah.
So, I
Yeah. I
mean,
know when I went to see it, I went to a pretty large theater, like a 16 theater,
yeah.
and the parking lot was completely full at the mall. Like it's a big outdoor mall. I had to park all the way behind it and walk about half a mile just to get into the darn theater.
Wow.
It was that full.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And George is making noise as usual, which is awesome. Of course, we have Eric Boyd in here, and he says Chester's a member of Secret Society of Reese's Peanut Butter Cups. Dude, don't you disrespect no Reese's over here. I love me some Reese's. I don't get them though. I can't buy them over here. Eric Hawkins said, "I would like to join the Peanut Butter Cups Secret Society." Yeah, so would everybody, dude. Roger Heller says, "How's it going, everybody?" Hey, how's it going, dude? Huge S says, "I think that $1 billion figure is worldwide. Billion domestic is more impressive. I think. Yeah, no, that would be if it was a billion domestic. Gee, I mean that's ridiculous. I'm sure they'll get there, but no, that is a worldwide number. You're right. And of course, we all know that when it comes down to the actual money, the big money they're making." It's the domestic totals. The international totals, they get a
Yep.
much smaller percentage of that. It is true. That is a true statement, Hugh. We'll see how it goes. Eric says, Eric says I would as well. You have to pay tribute to Chester to join. Dude, tribute comes in the forms of Reese's Pieces, by the way. The peanut butter cups, those are good too, but the Reese's Pieces, those are the ones that get you in. All right, just so you know, that's like liquid crack for sure. You ever had those before?
I have, yes, and I do not like them. I am one of those weird people who does not like Reese's at all. I
Well,
don't like
okay,
I
all
don't like
right.
chocolate and peanut butter together.
Well, you can
It's
get
never been
out.
my thing.
Go ahead. But anyway, enough of peanut butter cups and movies. We're here to talk about the Illuminati. Now, I do know there's a couple other members who wanted to come in and talk about this, and I'm assuming they'll show up at their own speed because you know how people are. I'm on time, however, as you guys noticed. But we're going to talk about the Illuminati, so I think maybe I'll just start out with my spiel and explain it a little bit, and then we'll get into it. How's that?
Let's do it.
All right, let's do it. So now. I'll come over here and share with you guys as well so you can see. We want you guys to be able to play along. So, And I figured out how to go around the nonsense they're doing over here, by the way.
Testing, testing.
Hi, George. Yeah, we can hear you now, dude. All right, so let me get into this. Now, the Illuminati. Now, it's kind of interesting when you do a search for the Illuminati, the first thing that always comes up is the dollar bill. And it's really interesting that they've connected this to this because, the Illuminati started as a Bavarian group, bent on religion and money making and things like that. But having money connected to it, it would make a lot more sense for me if it were something coming out of, say, Switzerland, and Rothschilds and stuff like that. But then again, I did say in the very beginning, I do believe there's a lot of Illuminati-like groups. I don't think there's just one. But nevertheless, this is a constant image that comes up with the Illuminati. Of course, is this the Eye of Providence, which we have on our own very own money. And just as a side note for historical information, there are references to this symbol that go back to antediluvian times. That's how old this symbol is, right? And it's also interesting that there's a pyramid with an eye, and yet they keep insisting the pyramids are post-diluvian, right? But obviously they're not because we have so much symbology of them antediluvian or pre-diluvian. So anyway, just as a side note, nevertheless, I thought there was a couple little interesting things I'd want to talk about it. This fella right here, he's the guy that kind of started it off in Bavaria, which of course is Germany. And I got a little blurb here I'll read through. It's an Enlightenment era society, secret society, founded in May 1st, 1776. Interesting. Interesting. The society's goals were to oppose superstition, obscurantism, religious influence over public life, and abuses of state power. Okay, it sounds nice. Bit of an activist group, SJWs maybe. The order of the day, they wrote in their general statutes, is to put an end to the machinations of the purveyors of injustice, to control them without dominating them. The Illuminati, along with Freemasonry and other secret societies, were outlawed through edict by the Bavarian ruler Charles Theodore, with the encouragement of the Catholic Church in 1784, 85, 87, and 1790. In the following years, the group was vilified by conservative and religious critics who claimed that they continued underground and were responsible for the French Revolution. Now, a lot of that kind of stuff goes around with this Illuminati, but here's the interesting thing. They were kind of dead, really, before the beginning of the 19th century. But there's a couple little quotes I thought was kind of interesting. I got one quote I put up anyway. Here's George Washington. Now, George Washington is a contemporary of them, so it kind of makes sense that he's talking about them. But he says, it was not my intention to doubt that the doctrines of the Illuminati and the principles of Jacob, but my brain just went on me. That word had not spread in the United States. On the contrary, no one is more truly satisfied of this fact than I am. The idea that I meant to convey was that I did not believe that the lodges of Masons in this country had, as societies, endeavored to propagate the diabolic tenets of the first, or their pernicious principles of the latter, if they are susceptible to separation. That individuals of them may have done it, or that the founder of or instruments employed to found the democratic societies in the United States may have had these objects and actually had a separation of the people from their government in view, is too evident to be questioned. So here we have George Washington talk about the Illuminati, saying that he's basically trying to separate the Illuminati from the Freemasons, which we know he was one of, and saying they're not connected. He's not being very strong about how much he hates on them, but he is certainly trying to separate the two as being distinct things, because I guess at the time they were thought to be the same. And as we all know now, he and all the other founder fathers were Masons, right, or some variation of it, Rosicrucians or something like that. But it's very interesting that the president of the United States is referencing this group, showing the influence they had. Another president who talked about him, which this is more interesting, is Abraham Lincoln. He talked about the Illuminati too. But here's the weird thing: they were supposedly completely defunct and destroyed decades before him. I mean, decades, like half a century before him, right? Before he was born. But yet he talks about it. It's very interesting that we see continued references of this group that was the supposedly dead group. Interesting couple little points. This guy right here, Adolf Nieg, he was their main promoter. He traveled all over the world trying to build them up. And this right here is on the left side is a building where they had supposedly one of their last meetings, or one of their big, really successful meetings. But this was like a meeting house of the Illuminati. It is also interesting to note that they would put out open flyers, so it's not like they didn't start as a secret society, it seems, because they were being very open about their recruitment. This is a flyer, right? But the last little interesting point I want to touch on before we go into Illuminati, and I'm kind of sure these guys are going to get into more of the Illuminati in the modern time, is the fact that they chose this owl. Minerva's owl. And we know that this, of course, is another symbol of Moloch or Baal or Saturn or whatever you want to call it. It has many names and references, but it also has a lot to do with human sacrifice and evil. And we know that when you go with those guys over to the Bohemian Groves and they come, there was images that came out, which Alex Jones was actually part of when he was a young man, by the way, and that we see all these world politicians over there worshiping in frickin' robes to a giant owl statue, right? And they said, "Oh, we're just cosplaying fun." Really? You're the leader of France or America or Japan or something like that, and you're cosplaying the sacrifice of children? How is that? What? That was their excuse,
Yeah.
by the way.
No, of course it was.
Nevertheless, this is my spiel on the Illuminati. This is kind of laying out where they came from. So now let's kind of look into and talk about possibly where they went. So, what do you think about that?
I think the Illuminati is very real, and they are infiltrated the DMV.
I imagine that happened a long time ago, George, from the beginning. Inception.
I think it's foolish to think that when they were an open organization that did play the role in revolutions and things all throughout Europe, it's foolish to think they would be thwarted so easily as a decree from a government and then shut down. More than likely, what happened is since Lincoln was talking about them, they just moved, and they either had a change of leadership and they definitely had a change of tactics because they no longer put out flyers and made their presence as known as it was, and they probably even changed their name. The fact that everybody, if they're as truly as secretive as they are supposed to be, the fact that everybody knows their name and knows their symbolism would be very troublesome for them. So they very
Eventually.
well could,
Yeah.
yeah, they very well could just use that name as a red herring for whatever it is they're really doing, if they still exist. But even if they don't, there are definitely organizations like them that exist, no question. One is a good example is the Bilderberg Group, which
Mhm.
could be a part of them or it could be something totally separate, but it definitely exists. I know for years people denied it. The media denied that it even existed. Even though people could see all these world leaders coming together for this secret meeting, they would deny that it existed until eventually they didn't have a choice but to finally be honest that yes, this is what happens, but of course we don't actually know what goes on in there.
Well,
Um,
and the fact that you have very rich and powerful people coming together to try to keep themselves rich and powerful is not really a surprising thing to me. I don't know why it
no.
would be. And the interesting thing about the Bilderberg Group, which is certainly another type of Illuminati, like I said in the beginning, I think there are many. But the interesting thing
Mhm.
about them is you got people like Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, etc., that go to them and suck at their teat for scraps. Because understand, they are not big power players in that. They are simply invited guests. That tells you a lot when you see people like Macron and other people are showing up and they're just guests, right? They're not big members of those groups. They're like the periphery, if anything. But yet these are world leaders, like the leaders of America, right? And of course the leader of Japan as well. It shows you the power level of the Bilderberg, because you get basically Barack Obama and Hillary going over there grovel to him, right? It's impressive if
Yeah,
you think about it.
absolutely. Yeah, their power is I mean they draw in pretty much every major leader, or people who are representatives of that leader, including not just governments, including of private industry, of all different stripes, including intelligence agencies.
Yep.
So there's obviously something going on there other than they're just getting together and having a talk, right? They're not just all these powerful people whose time is extremely valuable are not just coming together for a chit chat and a cosplay or whatever they said they were doing at Bohemian Grove. There's something going on there,
Obviously.
and the fact that it's so secretive. And like I said, for years they denied it even existed. You were crazy. It was a conspiracy theory. Oh, that's nuts. When really all it is just like you said, it's most likely just a group of very rich, very powerful people who keep their name largely out of the public, at least the top echelon of it, because they're that powerful and they can do that. Um, and they just get together and talk about world affairs and how to enshrine their power and their wealth. This isn't new. This has literally been going on since people were people,
Of
right? I
course.
mean, you it's always existed. It's just the fact that they're so secretive about it now. And I would venture to guess the main reason they're so secretive about it is because of groups like the Illuminati becoming so public that
Yeah.
they decided they didn't want that to happen again.
True, and I think there's a lot of connecting tissue when it goes to this. Talking about where did they go, because obviously they're still around. Because, like I said, Abraham Lincoln is talking about them, so they weren't dead in the 1860s. So
Hmm.
obviously they had somehow survived, and I think there's a lot of evidence that shows that they actually infested the American Masons, in particular the Scottish Rite. And the interesting thing is, I think that's where they went after their troubles in Bavaria. I do think they had some activities in France and all over the world, but I think they had connected themselves with the Scottish Rite, which is a type of Mason, right? And I believe that they infested America. And one of the, I think, examples of that is that, of course, George Washington himself being kind of forced to become president, actually, in a way, because he really didn't want it. That's why he quit after 2 terms, by the way. It wasn't because he was being magnanimous, like he would, but he's an ass, so he's always want people to think he's better than he is. But he just didn't have want anything to do with it. Is really what it came down to, because he had better things to do. But and I'm not going to get into George Washington here. But if you want to, if you people don't understand George Washington, he is a deified figure in American history. There, you go to the Washington, you go to the mall over there, and you can see him literally represented as a god in many, many places. But he, in truth, was a very troublesome person. He's the one that caused the French Indian War. It was his actions that caused that, and illegal actions, by the way. He stole land from his own soldiers. He did a lot of nasty things. He was not this omnipotent, gracious and benevolent leader at all. But nevertheless, we know he was a Mason along with the other ones. And the one who actually kind of gets vilified these days is Benjamin Franklin, because the dude liked to have sex, right? He had a lot of ladies. But in the end, he was
Hmm.
probably the most honest of them. Interestingly, but the reason another thing I add on to the Scottish Rite with the with the Illuminati in particular, is the fact that starting with George all the way until Donald Trump himself, they are all related to the Bruce line, all of them, right? There's like three of
Yep.
them, or maybe three or four of them, that are like a couple of a couple of steps separated, like second cousin type of relations to it. But they're all somehow related to the Bruces. Now I understand that the argument is, because I mean, I'm a Busby, right? And therefore Buzz or Bush, like the Bushes, right? But I have the Bay title. The Bay were, throughout history, all the way from Egypt, they are the ruling families. They're the ones who serve the royalty and manage things. Baronials, the barons, right? So at one point in history, my family actually would have been in charge of the Bushes, who would have lived on our land. How times change, right? But
Yeah.
but I mean, technically, therefore, because I'm a Strathclyde family, I have relation to the Bruce somewhere or another. I've never tracked it, but I must have it. There's no way I wouldn't. Where we would be part of the overall Scottish, clan nobility, right? somewhere,
Right.
some aspect of my blood. Who knows how close I'm connected to it? But of course, we got chased out of England by the frickin' King James, and who betrayed us and stuff like that in 1657. But that's a whole nother story. But so we haven't had power for centuries. But that's why my family ended up in America, actually. Nevertheless, the fact that they're all related to the Bruces, even Trump himself, says something. There's something to that. America supposedly doesn't have a royalty, but yet we do. Because all these presidents who are supposed to be randomly chosen, how is it possible that they're all related, including the black guy? Right? You
Right. Yeah,
you do
that was the
realize that he's
most interesting.
cousins with George Bush, right? They're actual cousins.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that one's the most interesting in my opinion because at some point Barack Obama's bloodline got mixed in there enough that he's
Well, it's his
related,
mama.
directly related to him. Yeah.
It's his mom. Yeah. But it's really interesting thing, and that's what I would say on that. Let me catch up with the chat real quick, and I'll let you guys continue. Illuminati is a guild, and it needs to be overthrown, says Eagle 43. Um, Also, Eric Hawkins says, I will happily trade Reese's Pieces for strawberry Kit Kats. Everybody will do that. Those things are awful. It's like toxic food. Does the pyramid have different meanings over time? I think the pyramid is that. Do you really want to go down that? Let me come back to that one. Remember that one, Thundero. Let me come back to that because that's a long conversation. Nick W
Okay.
says, and shadows still conceal our light. Vandal Savage. Ooh, nice, dude. Eric Boyd says, Eric Hawkins. I know I stated earlier that off topic, but that sounds interesting. I need to try those. No, you don't. You don't need no strawberry Kit Kats, dude. Trust me. Just trust me. Eric Boyd says they are in Japan supposedly, but back to the Illuminati. We will talk candy later. Yes, we should, and yes, they do have strawberry Kit Kats here, and it is an abomination. Obi-Wan Reviews is in here. He says, "Hail Raven." Why? Why not? Why not hail fan speak? See, that would be cooler. Eric Boyd says, I know Alex Jones investigated and produced a video about the Bohemian Grove when he was younger. He wasn't a participant or involved with them, was he? I don't know. Well, actually, he was doing undercover journalism. Well, he was trying to at the time. And he was part of that exposure in that video and stuff that came out. And his report was quite disturbing. Of course, his firsthand accounts, you can argue because it's just his word. He said this happened. He was talking about a lot of homosexuality and pedophilia and stuff like that. And we know inside Hollywood and political groups around the world, this is an issue. We know this is an issue, even though they try their best not to let it be talked about in the press. But beyond what Jones himself said, the video shows everything you need to see. These are a bunch of world leaders wearing dark robes standing in front of a giant baby sacrificing statue doing mock sacrifices. Now, on the video, we don't see actually murder going on, but they're doing mock sacrifices. And that's not a game. That's not role playing. We don't role playing sacrificing babies. That's not a game, right? But anyway,
No,
Mangatine Joshua
absolutely.
says fake news provided by Guild and the Elves. Okay, now we're going back to D&D. Gigadeath Comic Book says, hello, everybody. Well, hello to you, and hail Fanspeak. Thank you very much, Obi-Wan Reviews. Now, what was the thing I told you to remember so I could come back to it?
Pyramids.
Pyramids. Oh, yes, pyramids. Here's the thing. How do I'm going to make this as absolutely short and as I can, very succinct. Here it is. About 4,000 years ago, there was a big old war. And that war, we have many surrounding informations and details. It was a dark. The world got thrown into a serious dark age for quite a while, and then it's just a few centuries after that, we fell into another big dark age because of an eruption of a volcano. And of course, after that, we saw the Greeks emerge, right? But this 4,000 year ago war, it was between the gods, right? That's what all the stories tell us. And the interesting thing is after that war, because we had a whole bunch of Dark Age in between where nothing was coming out, right? And then the Greeks arrived. But when the Greeks arrived, their gods were some distant thing living on Mount Olympus. They were not walking with the people. They were not with the people. Matter of fact, a lot of the stories about the gods were allegoric, right? But when you look at before that 4,000 year ago war, the gods were there. They were walking with you. They're right next to you, right? And the stories continued for thousands and thousands of years. It was an ongoing saga, like a soap opera. It wasn't the same stories being retold over and over and over. No, they were continued line. After that war, like with the Greeks, the Romans, etc., we see the stories just being kind of told over and over, and they become more and more distant to the point that it's some omnipotent God that snaps his fingers and sings a universe into being, right? But in the old days, the gods walked with the people, and their stories were continuously told and praised by the people. And the thing is, a pyramid, there were two types. You had the big pyramids that were sitting in like Giza and stuff like that. Those things were communication devices. That's what they said. Okay. The other type of pyramids, like a ziggurat or the step pyramids you see South America, stuff like that, those were very different. Those were the houses of the gods. The gods would live in the bottom layers and they'd have various equipment and stuff above it. And we know as we go and look at a ziggurat, it is laid out inside like a building, right? Whereas a pyramid is not. It looks like some kind of weird machine. It has no stairs, it has no painting, no art. It's got all kind of chemical burns and all kind of interesting stuff that's in a pyramid. So the two type have to be separated very very completely. A pyramid seemed to have been some kind of tool, or at least they thought it was when they built it. Which you would think they would know what they're doing building a freaking thing, the beast the size of that. But the ziggurat was supposed to be a home. So the question with this, if you go look at the older images of the Eye of Providence, it's not a tight little pyramid like we use on the dollar. It's actually a ziggurat. So I think what it's representing is the home of the gods and the wisdom of the gods. Did that explain that quickly and shortly, Thundaro?
Yeah, yeah. I think that's about as good as a quick explanation as you're going to get on it.
I think so. I don't know if I could do
But it
better.
is interesting. It is interesting how they've adopted. If the Illuminati, a lot of their symbolism is very similar to Masonry, like you said, because
It is
you believe that they basically took over a big chunk of the
a certain
Masons,
a certain portion of it. Yeah.
or yeah, or infiltrated it, I guess you could say.
Yes.
Um, which is very possible. I mean, it is interesting how much numerology and things play into, especially the modern day conspiracies about the Illuminati. It's which is something that it also plays into the Masonry conspiracies as well. Of course, is numerology. How important numbers are, how they consider certain numbers sacred, things of this nature.
Well, and I really wish we had DeWolf with us today. I know he was going to try to come because DeWolf, spoilers, is a Mason, right? And he's, as far as we know, he is just a normal Mason. And the average Mason is just a person who belongs to this organization that tries to organize their efforts to make the world a little bit better. I mean, honestly, that's what the average
Yep.
Mason is. They donate, they do charity, they run charity benefits, they do a lot of stuff to try to help people, actually. Now, does the Masons have a dark side, or did they have a dark side? Possibly, sure, why not? But the average Mason is not that, and I really wish we had him in here to talk about it because he could give us maybe more detailed information on that aspect of it. But nevertheless, I see someone here sounds like. Of course, that's George, guys. Anytime there's any kind of noise, he kind of like Pigpen. Pigpen with the peanuts, and he's always everywhere he goes, he leaves a trail of dirt. Well, it's George. He's just leaving a trail of sound, right?
It's just
But
my popcorn.
is it popcorn? Are you enjoying yourself? Okay.
I'm
Uh,
I'm I'm enjoying this. I'm really enthralled. I have a theory about DeWolf.
okay.
I think he's not here because he would be disclosing too many dark secrets.
Well, you
And all
never
these
know.
masons, and all these masons, weren't these guys just brick builders?
Well, that's what a Mason would be, right? But of course, this is knowledge being coming down from Egyptian times and stuff like that. But a lot of the religious aspects to the Masons is really just talking about it's really the old Sumerian religion and stuff like that is all. And it doesn't, which sounds weird because a lot of people connect the Masons to a Christian society, and they are. Most Masons are Christians, and but the thing is, these ancient Sumerian beliefs are Christian beliefs. The only difference is the Bible is just a generic, washed down version of those stories. That's all. So it isn't strange to me at all that the Mason teachings and Christians are compatible. Of course they are. There could be two levels of Masons. I see ads in theaters for the Masons. Call 1-800 be a Mason. So there might be a higher level of Masons. I think there are. And there's a big argument about the 32 levels of Masonry and the fact that that's actually just the beginning, and the real Mason doesn't start until after that. Now we talked about that a little bit with and this is Eric Hawkins saying this, but we talked a little bit with DeWolf about that, and he really didn't see any kind of distinction between ranking at all. It seemed, but it was kind of interesting when he said that. But like I said, I don't want to speak for him. Let him talk about it himself. But it would have been interesting to have him here, though, huh, Thunder?
Yeah, he has said in the past though that if it's anything he can't talk about, he just wouldn't answer you. You could ask the question and he just won't answer
Yeah, but
because
then again,
he took an oath not to.
he has. But then again, DeWolf has slipped a couple times on a couple things, and he's let out I don't know if you guys have been paying attention, but he seems to have some kind of CIA connection. I don't know what it is.
Uh-oh.
Yeah,
Wait a minute. He's in the Illuminati. That's why he's not
that's
here.
probably why,
Busted
right?
him.
Yeah,
We figured it
oh,
out.
he's in the chat. He's watching. He's monitoring us. I guarantee it. You want to see if we get it close? You know. No,
He's getting ready to shut it down.
Yeah, of course we're
He's
kidding.
gonna shut it down.
But anyway, so there's our opening salvo into the Illuminati, and I think that's a pretty good one. That was a pretty good opening. So now what I'm going to do is let's start with Thundero this time, and let me come over here and do like I usually do, and I'm going to let him take the lead, and you guys can see this change I just did. I'm assuming. Yes, you can. Good, good, good. Let me take this lead and go over here and do any kind of search he wants me to do. So what do you want me to look up, dude? Where do you want to go?
Well, for now, you kind of actually covered what I was originally going to talk about, but that's okay. It is interesting to me though that people deny in existence of a group or a group like the Illuminati, even though it's pretty obvious that these things exist. Now,
Mm-hmm.
whether they call themselves the Illuminati still or not, that group, that organization didn't go away because, as you said, Abraham Lincoln and others, by the way, not just Abraham Lincoln, world
Yeah.
leaders had mentioned them directly after they were supposedly disbanded. So, and in fact, Lincoln had fought with, he didn't necessarily call it the Illuminati, but he had been fighting with people from all over the world trying to co opt America even back then. And he was very open about this. He would say things about, bankers and things of this nature trying to meddle in American affairs. It's one of the reasons he introduced the greenback was to fight that off. Um, but that's neither here nor there. Specifically, the Illuminati, I would say that, like I was saying before, most likely, if they still exist as a cohesive unit, whether it be just some ritual or even maybe still a name, they don't really call themselves that anymore. They probably
doubt it.
have just moved on to whatever, or they just don't have a name, right? They just know each other, and that's how they do it. They keep it as off paperwork as you can, off the record as you can. Tab is Illuminati.
I know, that's hilarious.
It is interesting though that like I was talking about was the symbolism, how much of it is the same as ancient civilizations. And a lot of people have said that the name the Illuminati is relatively new, but the group or versions of it existed long before, all the way back through Roman times and maybe even further. And that they were a secret society that helped usher in the Dark Ages, really. They had worked against the Roman Empire and things of this nature to try and weaken them and eventually collapse the half of it. And the eastern half of it was much stronger to subversion and didn't fall. It obviously took a lot longer to fall and fell to Muslims more than anything.
Well,
But
and there's also a little bit of historical touching to that because that kind of attack that came at the fall. We talk about the fall of Rome, but it's not an
yep,
accurate statement to say the fall of Rome. It didn't fall like you think it did. And they said it was
right.
taken over by barbarians. Well, who were those barbarians? Well, they were extremely sophisticated people who are already part of the Senate, and they were from Gallia and Celtia. And in many ways, it was revenge for the actions of Julius Caesar and his butchering of the Gallic people.
Yep. Yep, absolutely. But another thing, you also have to remember not only is the Illuminati a very interesting topic, but just secret societies in general. You could almost call for at least part of their existence the Praetorian Guard of ancient Rome was basically a secret society because it quite literally controlled the throne. If they didn't like the emperor, they just killed him. So it's a very interesting idea. I'm just talking about as a broader concept of the Illuminati because I think that's kind of become a catch-all term for just a massive conspiratorial, hidden shadow moving like government or agency.
Hmm.
Um, and because like you said, I genuinely believe there's more than one group, maybe even one more than multiple factions within them themselves that have
Probably.
different goals and different aims. But it's fairly obvious that certain organizations like the European Union, probably the UN as well, were started long before they were publicly started. Like there's papers written about them and how they were going to institute these new massive scale governments, like one in Europe, which is basically an empire. Everything so far has gone to plan from their papers that they wrote in like the 50s. These people who planned the EU, so it's definitely something, and they use the same, even if they're not the Illuminati, quote unquote. They use the same tactics of subversion, of getting in close to the levers of power and pulling them whenever they needed to get what they wanted.
Yep.
Um,
And
so it's very interesting.
it is interesting. Just a quick interjection though here with this I forget this guy's name, but I still don't understand how Beyonce married such an ugly man. But nevertheless, and he's much richer and powerful than her, and she is. I know it's shocking,
Hmm.
but he is. He's way richer than she is. I wouldn't. You would think Beyonce would just be, one of the top entertainments all the time. I mean, she doesn't have the best voice, but she's a killer entertainer. She's really good at entertaining, actually. But nevertheless, this pyramid
Oh,
thing and
thinker,
all these
thinker.
hand symbols we see these Hollywood kids love to do.
Yeah, which that's part of. Obviously, there's symbology in that, but there's also there's a lot of the stuff you'll see them do. Like a lot of mainstream artists will do things with numerology.
Yeah.
If you look into I don't have anything prepared at the moment, but there's a lot of that goes along, and people long have suspected that that's because that's basically one of the Illuminati's rituals is to kind of foreshadow what they're going to do. For whatever reason, they believe they have to do that, whether it's a religious reason or whatever. They believe they have to kind of foreshadow, tell people they're about to do something if it's a big thing that's going to affect their lives before they do it. So the way that they do that is through coded messages like numbers and symbols, things of this nature. And some people have even gone far to say it's straight out in media. You can see things like The Simpsons, especially, is really notorious for this, of just predicting events. Like they predicted President Trump. They almost to the year, actually. I think they went off by like 3 years. They predicted 9/11 pretty heavily. There's a lot of references to 9/11 long before it ever happened in all media, but especially in The Simpsons. There's a couple of them. So it's one of their supposedly their what's the word I'm looking for? Their precepts or whatever that they have to put out a warning that they're going to do this.
Mm.
They have to signal that something's going to happen if they're the ones planning it. And
Maybe.
that is supposedly also the hand gesture thing with the eye is obviously supposed to be that. But I think a lot of that's probably just artists trolling because
Well,
they know
maybe.
people think
And
that
I
stuff.
also think people read into stuff and they get all excited about things and they want to be part
Yeah.
of something. Kind of like I believe it was Charles Barkley was so happy on those sports interviews wearing his Mason ring and he wanted to talk about. He said, I can't really talk about it, but of course you can. You're not that high level, but he was so excited to become a Mason, right? I think it's part of it as well. But let me catch up with the chat right here because these guys got stuff to say. So let me see here. I have had a few uncles that were Masons, and they never spoke about it. Eric said. So have I. I got several uncles that are Masons. Jimmy Oatmeal says, "Hey guys, I heard from a pretty credible source that the cult of Raven actually exists. I don't know about that, dude. That's still up in the air." Gigadeath comic book says the Masons have oaths. Yes, they do. Of silence. Yes, they do. Ray Thulu said, "Now I want to dig out my old first edition of Steve Jackson's Illuminati. Get great drunken game night fodder." You know the cool thing about that game, actually, it's a card game. There are a lot of things in that game that actually came to be true, including the Twin Towers, because there's a picture in there of the Twin Towers on fire in that game. There's several other weird little references. That Steve Jackson game is creepy. Now, I think it's just he was just thinking what a secret organization might do, and they laid it out. Or was this more of this kind of predetermination laid out by these people, like Thundera was just talking about? But that is a very interesting little game. Eagle 43 says the Cults of Raven doesn't exist. Don't believe them, Jimmy O'Meal. Yeah, exactly. Giga that says I was a member of Amarok. Amarok. Does that mean I'm spying too? Probably. I have no clue what that is. Ray Thula says they were already Romanized. Of course. Bullet. They are the shadows of a shadow in in a tracksuit. Oh, goodness gracious. Scott says, hey, they built an airport for themselves. Come on, they did. Denver. That's a very interesting airport.
That's
Uh,
actually, you should look up some of the images in there, and we can
I
talk
will.
about that when you're
I
done with
will.
your chat.
You're just okay. Yes, it's and a gargoyle that talks and jokes about it. Okay, has to. They're still going on about the oatmeal joke. The Simpsons will tell us the future. It seems so. All right, I'm caught up basically. But I just did want to make a one little mention. That's why I stopped on this picture here, and then I'll go check the Denver airport. But this symbolism here, where the people say, "Well, it's the Eye of Providence is actually the Eye of Horus, is actually the Eye of Horus." Well, yeah, but the Eye of Horus isn't even the Eye of Horus, guys. This is way, way, way older than that. It's way older. There we have artifacts that have been found that are absolutely antediluvian, with language written on them we haven't even begun to know how to translate. Understand that we have whole languages from before the flood, sophisticated ones, very interestingly and almost sci-fi looking type of languages. When you see Hollywood make a sci-fi language for one of their movies, and it always looks very blocky and very modern looking type of thing, right? Well, we have languages from ancient times like that. They're just antediluvian, and we have no clue how to translate them. Nothing. You got to understand all the because I do this kind of work. You guys know I do, and the only reason we can translate any of the things we can is because we have various different. There's multiple Rosetta Stones, which basically is what I mean by that is we have these artifacts that show a thing written in two languages, and one of the languages we know. And therefore, we know what the body, we can figure out what the body of the other language is saying because it's the same thing. This is how we translate languages. We don't do it by some smart person figuring out this shape means that. No, you can't do that. That's impossible. That's like reading minds from someone, 10,000 years ago. You can't do that. So we have these languages, more than likely we'll never know what they say, right? That are written on these various artifacts, and they're very far and few between because the destruction that happened in that great cataclysm, which, like I said, is now academic, which I'm so happy it is, that was a really total destruction. And there's very little that survived, and most of it is these strange little stones that are these like round globe stones or kind of pyramid shaped stones that are made of very hard stone, and they've survived time, right? And it's kind of why the ancients worked in stone, because they knew it would last. But like I said, we have these ancient, truly ancient, spheres that have a map of the world inlaid in them with the lapis lazuli, or because that actually was lapis was a very big gemstone for them in the past, more so than say diamond, right? But it has a full maps of the world on it as we see it today. Basically, some of the areas are a little thicker, but those would have been what it looked like before the flood, right? But these things are very, very interesting, and this Eye of Providence has been around way longer than the Eye of Horus, right? So I just want to
Yeah.
make that point.
Well, the Eye of Horus is probably a representation of the pineal gland. It looks
Maybe.
almost identical to it, which is the gland inside your brain that people have said is the third eye or the gateway to the soul or whatever. Um, and if you look, I'm actually looking at it right now. It's almost identical. I mean, it's flipped usually from what you see, but it's you could easily make the claim, and it would be very easy to believe that those are very similar ideas. One's an interpretation of what they saw, because we know the especially the Egyptians, you would do autopsies, very advanced autopsies. In fact, the first brain
Well,
surgery
the Sumerians
recorded, as
did
far as
that.
I'm aware.
Well, the Sumerians
Yeah,
did the same thing, and they're thousands of years before the Egyptians. They had a
yeah,
full-on society, dude. Brain surgery, bankers, lawyers. I mean, everything we have. Now, maybe they
yeah,
didn't have, computers and stuff like we do, sure, but everything else we have in our modern society, they had in Sumer, and it came out of nowhere.
yeah.
I mean, it just appeared, right? And I mean, I'm not kidding. You think of anything we have in our society today, they had that. And they had brain surgery. They had all kind of surgery actually. I've done translations on mainly what I do is like receipts or court documents because my level's not super high, right? So
Hmm.
I just kind of take care of the unimportant stuff, right? I'm part of that group that does that. But nevertheless, I've seen documents talking about the suits of like for instance, if you're a doctor and you screw up and there was one, it's like one is talking about an eye surgery that gone bad. They were removing cataracts. You understand
Hmm.
how difficult surgery that is. They were removing
Yeah.
cataracts, and the doctor screwed up. So the punishment was he lost his hand, so he couldn't practice anymore. So they were pretty strict about it as
Oof.
well. But the fact that you have a very casual court case just talking about a botched cataract surgery from freaking 8,000 years ago, that's something, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we also know that they had knowledge of what, we don't know how advanced it was, but they had knowledge of electricity. They had knowledge of storing electricity to some degree. Um, we just don't know how far it went, because
No.
if there was technology beyond just stone, it didn't survive time. So it's hard to tell, but we know that they absolutely did. They talk about it. You can see it in their art. I mean, it's obvious what they're depicting. Um, so they knew of advanced, what would be extremely advanced, at least so we're told, technology even back then in manipulation of electric current, which is, for us anyway, is relatively modern. It's only been a few hundred years that we've been able to actually do it significantly. So it's just interesting how much was lost in the collapse, the multiple that we've had, civilizational collapses that have led to dark ages. We've lost all
Mhm.
sorts of knowledge.
Now, actually, Roger Heller says something very. We have lost a lot too, by the way. But Roger Heller says, so could the Illuminati be aliens, and we could desire some of their languages, or we? What is he trying to say? I don't know what he means by that. But could they be aliens? Well, let me throw a little theory at you here. And this isn't necessarily my theory, but I think it's interesting. Now, I talked about the situation with 4,000 year ago war, and the fact that things changed radically. Something happened at that moment in history. Something radical happened. But if we look at the one of the big things that shifted is that you have basically two camps of these alien gods. And remember, the older we go, the further we go back in the stories, the less god they become. They're just visitors with higher technology. They're not gods at all, right? They age, they die, right? But nevertheless, these gods, there's two camps. You had the Enlilites and you had the Enkyites. Right, and these are the two brothers, which we've seen the battle of the brothers, the struggle between the brothers is in every aspect of every culture on this planet, right? And but they had many disagreements about many things. But Enki supposedly is one that designed the process for the monkey man to be turned into the human slave. Right, and his sister Ninhursag is the one who did, and his son Ninchita are the ones who did the actual operation. But Enki, he believed that you humans would be ruled better from the shadows. Make them believe they're in charge, make them think that they're the ones making decisions, and this is a much easier and more fluid way of controlling the human beings. Where his brother Enlil, He believed, no, 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 we control them directly with an iron fist. They know we're here. We keep them in line by with pure fear. And these two thinkings were very were very diametrically opposed, of course. And what had happened was is and Leal, because like I said, this is like a soap opera. These stories are going on from the original progenitors down to like grandchildren or great grandchildren. These stories continue. But and Leal's son Ninar Sin, and he who is Allah, by the way, just so you know, as far as where they're getting their Allah from. It's the Ninar Sin storyline, right? But Ninar Sin, he was his father's son, and he believed the strong iron fist, and he was very warlike. But Enki's son, Marduk, he believed that he deserved the throne and the control of power because his father was the older. But his younger brother Enlil was given control over the planet because his mother was a royal, whereas Enki's mother was a concubine. Right, so it was just a matter of blood succession. But Marduk didn't care. He was like, "No, my dad's the oldest, therefore I should be in charge." So Marduk and Ninar Sin went at it quite a bit, and in the end, Ninar lost, and Marduk won. And then at that same time is when we see this big shift. And if Marduk is his father's son, and even though his father got very frustrated with him because of his nonsense, because his father was very anti-war, right? And his father went north and created a new group of people to live in peace and get away from the nonsense, which technically, I guess that would be the Celtic Whites, is the ones he created if you follow that storyline. But nevertheless, Marduk took over, and if he's his father's son, it might explain why we went from direct control with gods walking around the people and controlling them directly to this shadow government stuff. So if you're asking if aliens are the Illuminati, and we're talking about how old the Illuminati is, and this is just a modern name of it, well, maybe it's exactly what it is. Maybe it's just Marduk and his people doing what they do.
Well, it would explain if the Illuminati is tied to like Bohemian Grove and things of this nature, which would make sense since they use the owl of Minerva,
Hmm.
Moloch. It would explain them having worshiping or at least ritualistic worship, whether it's real for them or not, whether they believe it or not. They at least ritualistically do it of a very ancient god. Um, it would explain a lot if their a lot of their at least their rituals and things were extraordinarily ancient in origin.
Hmm.
Because why of all the ancient gods, why Baal, Moloch, whatever you want to call them, why him? Like, there's plenty of other ones with different names, but for some reason, or her, sometimes it's a her too. For some reason, that's the one they seem to um, what's the word I'm looking for? They seem to resonate with. They seem to propagate or at least ritualistically believe in.
Well,
So it would make sense if it was coming from an ancient line of why they would still do that.
sure. Let me touch on a couple of things you just said, along with what Scott is saying. Read Sitchin. Now, Sitchin to me is kind of like Newton, meaning he started the conversation off well, but there's a lot of people who came after Sitchin who do it better. I mean, I love Sitchin. He's fun read, but there are people who are more scholarly. Well, Sitchin was very scholarly too. I don't want to take anything away from him, but he's kind of like Newton. The people who come after have built on it more successfully, I think, giving us a better picture, really. But I don't want to disrespect Sitchin at all. But here's the interesting little comment because you said, and sometimes they're female too. There is a couple of really strange little comments, just offhand comments in the old writings, and I'm talking about the ancient stuff, right? The stuff that are from libraries that state that they're copied from libraries from antediluvian times, right? And it's interesting that these libraries actually use the word antediluvian, by the way. They actually say before the
Hmm,
flood, right? As if you
interesting.
want more evidence. But nevertheless, what they made, there's one little statement offhand I think that's very interesting, and when they made a decision to because they needed workers. They didn't have enough hands. The simple fact of the matter, if you read those old stories, they really are science fictiony. But the problem they had was they could not travel through space to this planet super easily. It was like they were kind of a burgeoning space culture. They weren't really super skilled at it. Almost like they weren't that much more advanced than we are right now, the way it reads, because they had a lot of trouble and they had a lot of failed missions. They were having a big time getting past Jupiter. Jupiter just kept pulling their ships in and murdering their crews, and eventually they did find a way around it. And that gave them a route. They found a path to be able to get to Earth, but they could only bring like 50 at a time. They couldn't mass transport people or materials actually. So they were really a burgeoning space culture. Actually, the way it reads, and they were having trouble because they needed to get things done, and they just didn't have enough hands, and that's where they came up making the human, the Adapa or the Adamu, but in doing that, there's an interesting little comment. It's because Enlil was very much against it because Enlil was very religious. He believed in their God that they call the creator of all. Right? Understand that gods had gods. This is weird, but and he thought it was sacrilege to play God. He was very much against it. Right? But he was outvoted by his father. Right? Who was the boss, and when they doing that, he did put one caveat down. He said that, but you must separate like unto us the female seed, right? Which he used the word seed, which is weird in unto itself. But I think this and a
Right.
couple of the little references, it's almost as if they were hermaphroditic or something, right? And then
Could be.
And Enki did this at first as he was told, but later on he created a separated female version to make babies so they could be self-replicating, which caused Enlil to get all pissed off. And this is where the whole Garden of Eden conversation comes in, because that conversation between God and the devil, or the thing that's going on between God and the devil, is actually between Enlil and Enki in the original story, right? I'm just kind of curious that maybe if you believe these things are true, that maybe they were a hermaphroditic species. And maybe that's why you do
Could
see
be.
gods represented as male and female. Like, for instance, we see Saturn or Kronos as a very male character, right? But if you come over here to Japan, the dark sun or the midnight sun is Amaterasu, which is a female. And the Japanese don't know that she actually represents Saturn. They think she represents the sun itself. They don't understand their own writings. Of course, none of them read it, I guess. But she actually is Saturn. So here we have a female version of Saturn and a male version of Saturn, and we see this all across the board, right?
Hmm.
It is an interesting little take. I don't know if it has anything to do with our conversation today, but I just thought it was interesting.
Well, it's also interesting because, as you said, they use Minerva, which is obviously a female god,
Yes, yeah,
goddess, and but then at the same time, the same symbol, the owl, is also Moloch.
it is.
So
Yeah,
I don't know if they believe it's the same god, two different versions of two different sides of the same coin, basically, or if it's a polyistic thing, or if it's just for symbolism. They like it. It represents wisdom and knowledge. I don't know, but I'm sure none of them are going to tell us either.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but
It's
it is
just
interesting that the dichotomy there,
it
that
is.
it's both male and female.
Yeah, and it could be
The
completely
owls.
metaphoric. It could be completely
Yeah,
metaphoric. It's possible, right?
absolutely.
Yeah. Let's see. George says something instead of saying it here. I don't know why. He says, breaking news. The Patriot Brigade has privatized their social media account to avoid much needed new recruits, whatever that means. Scott says, without him, the knowledge would still be unknown. I don't know who we're talking about here. Uh,
Stitching.
Sitchin. No, Sitchin is very important fellow. He
Yeah.
is. I'm just saying there are people who have advanced it, is all I'm saying. We came from Mars. Well, anyway, the if you read the old stories, when Enki left because he was just sick and tired, he was trying to get them not to go to war. His son in Nenar Sin, he was trying to stop it. They wouldn't listen. He got pissed off and he left. And from all accounts, he never came back. Right, and we know that he traveled to Mars initially, and we know that he created a new race to serve him in the way he thought humans should be made. And understand, he'd always kind of advocated for humans having their own free will to a point, right? He believed more in the shadow government
Mhm.
than directly iron fisting a human. But the fact that he was there and then he brought them back. So in the story, it says that his people, which would be the Nordic Celtic people, were created in the laboratories of Mars and brought back to his new abode in the ice of the north. Right. So technically, if you believe in the old stories, then yeah, the Celtic people did come from Mars. Technically, although
Interesting.
we were made of human earthly materials, though. Scott says, the Mars thing is a very interesting theory. It is an interesting theory, but I mean, once again, it's said right in the Chronicles. So,
Hmm.
let's see. Eagle 43 says, George, we are in need of new recruits. Oh, goodness, here we go. Eric says, I tried to travel through space. I got distracted and failed because I couldn't get around Uranus. Huh? Uh, got pulled into my black hole. Oh yeah, there we go. Did you see that nonsense representation of a black hole they put up the other day, a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. It's nonsense. It's complete nonsense.
it is. So,
And the best part about it, just totally off topic, but the best part about it is they gave all this credit to this girl, and she didn't even do 1% of the work. She just somehow got all the credit because woman, I guess.
yeah, whatever. Yeah, it's nonsense. So is the theory that the moon is really the arc? I've heard this. There's a lot of mystery around the moon. We could do conspiracy theories of the moon one day if we wanted. It's an interesting topic. I do know that. Interestingly, the groups that Enki made on Mars and the ones he brought back to his northern abode, which would be Scandinavia somewhere, I guess, or the four islands that came out to be, I can't remember the names offhand, but if you read the Tuatha De Danann, they're all listed very clearly. But actually, the when the flood came, and all that stuff happened. We know Enki came back down. He warned his son, his half-human son, which we call Noah, to escape from the disaster. The interesting thing is there are some theories that place this as being two separate issues, meaning we had a worldwide flood here because of what happened in space. It was a destruction of Typhon that actually caused now this is not Sitchin stuff. This is other people's theories. But the destruction of Typhon is what caused the destruction of Mars and the near complete destruction of Earth, and that's where all that all the water and all the asteroids and all that stuff came from, was from the destroying of a planet. And the fact that the Noah story, actually, the oldest version we have is actually the Irish one, Tuatha De Danann, which is odd, right? It's not what I would expect to have been true. But the fact that they're actually escaping from the four colonies on Mars and coming to Earth. And that is the journey in the ark. It's through the waters of space, of heaven, not the waters of Earth. It's a very interesting theory. I don't know if it's there anything to it, but for me, I mean, no one knows the truth anyway. So whatever you it makes you happy, I guess. But I think it's pretty cool. Scott says, yes, some it's a hollow machine. It is hollow. Well, we just don't know why. Chester, have you heard of the Theoba? It was a book written by a guy. You recounted his abduction by a group of aliens, and they were hermaphrodites. Yes, yes, I know this story. George, I don't know why he's not talking. George says, "Why can't we use the super secret Okay, okay, George, you got to get serious, George. I guess not. I plead insanity. Eagle 43 says. Let me see if I catch up here real quick. Chester, Theoba, the might be smelling. Yeah, that's okay. Don't worry about smelling here. Scott says, when the limb landed on the moon, it rang like a bell for 10 minutes. Yeah, we've had several situations where meteorites and things hitting the moon and causing it to ring. It's a well-known phenomenon. The moon is made of cheese, maybe. Scott said another theory is the real landings were not televised. You saw Kubrick. That's a very strong theory. But all right, I caught up back on the chat. But
Okay, here's a theory:
mhm,
the migration from Mars to Earth, um, in the space arc,
yep,
was also coupled by the fact that one of the planets between Earth and Mars was destroyed, which had predominantly water, which is why we have an asteroid belt between Earth and Mars,
that's right.
and all that liquid
Well,
fell
some
onto
of it,
Earth, causing a great
some of
flood
it, yeah.
and bringing the ark with it.
Right. That's the theory. Yep. It's fascinating, isn't it? And it is based upon the writings of the Tuatha De Danann and their travels and stuff. And we know that Nuada, the king, the leader of the Tuatha, that he is his other name, of course, is Noah. He is Noah, right? It's the same character. And it's interesting because the Christian Bible is so watered down that they leave Noah as just kind of this normal guy, and they don't even really talk about him. He's just this shepherd guy, just this human guy. And I guess the Bible was really kind of written that way to really connect humans to the story more, right? But in
Mm,
the original writings of Noah, he's half God, right? He's got he looks like an alien. His father was all ripped off, ticked off, complaining because obviously one of the gods had slept with his wife, and he was not happy about it, right? And
mhm.
of course, Enki went and told him about the coming flood because Enlil had told them to keep it secret because he saw an opportunity to wipe off these damn noisy humans who he couldn't stand, right? And never wanted him from the beginning. But he didn't want his son to die because he'd had Enki was having sex with everybody. He's basically the kind of playing around Zeus type. And he went and told his son secretly that, hey, you need to build this thing. You need to get out of here because we're all about to die. Right now, if you bring in the theory of the destruction of Typhon as being part of that, because understand Sitchin's feeling is the destruction of Typhon story that the Sumerians have is actually talking about how the solar system came to be, is how he sees it. But there's other people who have looked at it differently, talking about an event that happened in their time, right? And if that story is true, then it does lay a lot of more credence on the Tuatha De Danann tellings of it, because there's a lot of detail there that make more sense if you're thinking about them traveling through space from Mars to Earth than simply being on Earth.
Yeah,
Is
that's
that?
interesting.
Yeah,
Before we continue, I have an announcement to make.
sure.
The the cult, the Parrot Brigade, formerly known as the Cult of Sparrow, formerly known as the Cult of Raven, will unprivatize their account for 2 minutes so they can get new recruits.
Okay, George. Yeah. Have fun with that. Now, of course, that took a long time, but here we are over here where Thundor asked me to come before I started talking a lot. Here we are at the Denver airport, and there's some really disturbing imagery over there.
Extremely disturbing, in fact,
Yeah.
um, to the point of it's grotesque in some ways. Like I don't understand who commissioned this into this airport, into this very public airport, one of the largest in the world.
Hmm.
Um, but it's very, very weird. Some of the imagery in here. If you can make that all the way like bigger, I don't know if you can or not, but
No, that's the biggest. I can go to
um,
other ones though.
I second the question. Who commissioned this? Who's the artist? What committee actually was involved in the decisions of this? Because something like this in a public airport of this magnitude, there's got to be some heavy shenanigans.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, the imagery is just unmistakable. It's brutal in every
It
way. I
is.
mean, especially look at the picture you have right here.
Yeah.
The fact that it's a scimitar or a very scimitar-like blade is obviously intentional.
It's killing
Um,
peace.
Killing peace, and it's clearly just it's a depiction of total war. That's basically what it is. Like, there's nothing about this that is neutral or like you would expect to see in an
Oh,
airport of all
oh, look at the
places.
rainbow too. The gays are involved. I knew it was conspiracy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the rainbow has a ton of symbolism, even beyond the uh, the gay flag.
It does. Yeah, I was just joking.
Let's
Look at
see.
this
Yeah,
piece
what's
too. I
this?
mean, what is this with this weird, creepy guy? What are you doing? What are you doing?
I mean, it's just weird,
It's not
very weird
appropriate for an
symbolism.
airport.
Not at all.
No.
And a lot of people do seem to think that it is tied to Illuminati. It's part of their foreshadowing that they like to do. Their symbolism they like to put forward before they do things or what they believe or things of this nature. Now, look at this. What is this?
Well, you know what it is. It's very much a Mason symbol, but it's been
Yeah.
just the artifacts have been changed slightly. We have the cornstalk representing the ladder. We have the eternal soul representing by the baby, and we have so above as so below.
Yep.
It's just done in Native
But my
American style.
yeah, it's just so strange that it's I think Denver's airport is the biggest in the country now.
Could could
It's
could Denver be one of the many places on Earth that has a direct link to the underworld?
Well, that's the kind of theory. That's a whole nother conversation. But I do know that the backup White House is now in Denver. I know that.
yes.
And this is one of the horses sitting out front of the airport. I mean, look at why does everything have to be so disturbing? This is an airport. This is a place that you want people to be calm. You
Right.
don't want this kind of feeling in an airport. This is very bizarre thinking. And
You
why
know what
is
this
this
looks
in the
like?
floor?
You know what this looks like? This looks like um, an area that they what's it called? An anointing of the public as they pass through this airport, uh, uh, anointing them with evil spirits. This is crazy stuff.
It is, and then it looks more like a nightmare than a horse or a bronco. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely has a nightmarish feel to it.
yeah,
I've seen it. I haven't seen it up close, but I've seen like really good picture, really high res pictures of it. It's not a Bronco. It's not even. People say, "Well, it's a Denver Bronco." No, it's
no,
not. That is
it's
a
not.
nightmare. 100%. You can see it in the eyes, in the face. It is a symbol of evil. But
And
yeah,
the
here's a nice
interesting
little
thing,
breakdown.
it is a breakdown. I go back if you like. The interesting thing, George, what you said was the fact that let's see if I can blow that up some. Is actually that when people accuse them of having an underground base there, what are you doing? Why'd you do that? Um, uh, when people accuse them of having underground base there, they don't say no. They simply say no comment.
Right.
So that's interesting
Or
unto
they'll just call
itself.
you crazy. They don't deny it. They'll just attack you or completely avoid it. Um, but I mean, look
Yeah.
at some of this stuff. America and other countries shown surrendering weapons to a new world order.
Hmm.
You have what appears to be, I would assume, a Muslim stormtrooper, basically, killing peace with a trail of dead people behind him. This says, "Dead girl." The dead girls represent the death of Africans, Native Americans, and the death of Jews and
Well,
Christians,
she's holding a
which
Bible.
is a very ridiculous thing. Yeah, you have a dead Christian obviously holding a Bible. Um, I don't know if this is in the airport or not, but I'm assuming it is somewhere. This Freemason and the commissions when it was all commissioned and
Sure.
built, and then the
New
New World
World
Order
Airport
established.
Commission. Look at that. New World Airport Commission. Interesting.
Yeah, and then the final picture is the NWO established, the New World Order. There's no Jews, no Christians, or Africans left, which is a very interesting group of people because that does not remove Asians and it does not remove Muslims
No.
from the equation or Indians.
Well, this image is obviously Muslim related, isn't it? I mean, look at it.
Yes.
Or
Yeah,
Islamic
100%. I
related.
mean,
I
look at
think we
that
should say
sword.
Islamic, but
The outfit is very Islamic. Looks like a military outfit from the region.
look, what does this see? This is inside the little library they have there. It says, "We hear your cry for liberation as we too now face that hateful legacy of greed and power. We choose instead to join you and pronounce a season of change from the roots of struggle and something, unearth a positive future of compassion." Well, it's a very dark way to talk about compassion.
Yeah, that sounds like the way the devil would introduce you to compassion. In all honesty, it's such a foreboding way of talking about something that's supposedly so benign or sublime. It's just weird. It's a weird thing. People have said it's end up like that picture shed said it's a New World Order imagery, things of this nature, Illuminati. People say it's just pure Freemasonry, and obviously the Masons had a hand in the construction of the airport or the design of it anyway. And it's just strange, and there's a lot of stuff like that all over the world. You have the Georgia Capstone, which
Yep.
is said to be part of the New World Order or the Illuminati, which is supposedly the same thing. Some people think, um, which is also or Georgia Guidestone. I'm sorry, I said Capstone. It's also very, very interesting. The fact that it's just a stone that nobody really knows how it got there, supposedly, and it's just in the middle of a field in Georgia.
Well, there's a little
Like,
bit of
what?
betrayal, actually. It was commissioned. We know that.
Isn't the
Um,
city of
Yeah.
Denver very high in altitude
yes,
compared to the
Yes.
rest of the cities
yes,
in the United States?
very high. That's
Yes.
why it's
It's
called the
called
Mile
the
High
Mile High
City.
City.
Um,
Yeah.
is this what the Denver airport looks like? Is it literally has a bunch of teepees put on top of it? Huh.
Is that what that's supposed to be?
I think it's a teepee, right?
Well, I know the airport itself is massive. It is an absolutely massive facility. And there is supposedly tunnels that run underneath of it. Now, the airport says that the tunnels are for service,
Of course.
so they can get from point A to point B, which would make sense. I'm sure they probably do have something like that under a lot of airports, but supposedly these tunnels are humongous, like city size in length and things. Basically, you could fit a city under there.
Look at this
Um,
crazy image. Look at
but I
this
don't know.
crazy thing. It's an eye with what? Come on, and that's Grateful Dead. Awesome. But I mean, come on, dude. Why would you put this in an airport? Conspiracies aside, man. Why would
Yeah,
you have that in an airport?
of all places. A place like you said that you want to keep people calm. They purposefully paint them certain colors to keep people calm. Like there's a lot of stuff that goes into making sure nothing excites anybody in an airport because they don't want to cause panic. And yet, you put these images that are anything but calming if you take anything longer than a glance at them. Like these are terrifying. They're terrifying images, the connotations in them.
Now you see this gateway they put here in the escalator, the moving well, walkways, I guess they call them. A lot of cultures around the world use archways to represent moving from one reality to the next. That's the symbolism behind it.
Yep. I think George might be right. I think there's something to the idea that this is a form of anointment or whatever you want to call it, um, which is something that they also are said to do. That they consecrate. I guess it would really be desecrate areas with their symbolism for the purpose of that. They anoint the area. Because they believe in metaphysical power, whether it's spiritual or demonic or whatever you want to call it. So they
Is
believe that this is how they claim power over an area.
Or
is Denver one of the heart arteries for air travel?
Yes,
I'd imagine
it
to
is.
the west,
It is
anyway.
it's central. I'm pretty sure it's one of the busiest airports in the world. I think London and like Tokyo or something like that are busier, but other than that, it's up there.
Yeah,
And
but
it's like I said, it's absolutely massive.
Okay,
you
so
could.
basically what we're seeing is, um, lack of a better description, is a distribution cluster
Yeah,
for evil.
Well,
absolutely.
we should keep in mind that this art that it
Nerve
was
center,
done, it also strikes me as very subversive, hippie, progressive type of art as well, though.
Well, yeah, but there's also, if you want to get real deep in it, there's also a lot of evidence that all of this stuff is part of their conspiracy to weaken the collective consciousness of of the Western civilization,
Mm.
um, especially postmodernism. The way it deconstructs everything and the way the artwork is just garbage. It's not inspiring. It doesn't lift you up.
Oh
When you
no,
look at
it's
classical
far from it's
artwork,
far from that. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, when you look at classical artwork, most of it, even the gruesome stuff, is just entrancing. Like it's beautiful. And now you have this modern stuff and it's garbage. I mean, I don't
Why
know
do
how
they
anybody
have
could
a
look at it and
statue
like
of
it.
Anubis?
I don't know. These are the questions that need asked. Why
Wait,
is there a statue of Anubis?
Anubis is it god of death or god of darkness? What is it?
No, he is the guide to the underworld. He's not an evil god at
Guide to
all.
the underworld.
He's not an evil at
So
all.
so
He's a guide.
so if you take everything in context right now, Denver is one of the gates to the underworld, or
That's
to
what
the
they seem to want to
one of
say.
the
Yeah.
one of the things that we talked about. What is it? The passages to the hollow earth.
hmm Yeah. No, I've heard a lot of theories about that. But I think no matter how you look at it, it is really disturbing. This image here, once again, it does from the air. If you look at the airstrips, it does look like a swastika. It does. The way they have the airstrips lined up, it looks like a swastika.
Yeah.
It's undoubtable. But just look at this imagery. It's like, no, this isn't good. You shouldn't have this in an airport. I can understand this if it was in an art museum done by a bunch of crazy SJWs. I wouldn't balk at it at all. I'd be like, yeah, of course. But this is in an airport, man.
Yeah, don't you want to have people happy to get on a plane instead of being felt anxious?
Yes.
We're getting
Yes. There is literally endless amounts of research into this. Hospitals use it, hotels use it, all sorts of things. It just
yep.
the way you set up a room, the color you paint a room, all this stuff is designed to keep people from being anxious. So when you put stuff like this in a place that you would think they wouldn't want anxiety to be a problem, it's weird. It's really weird.
It is. And actually, Bullet asks a very good question. He says, is the Denver airport on a ley line? Let me check it. Oh, what am I doing? God, so stupid. But do you know the interesting thing? Because people say, "Oh, that's nonsense," or this. It doesn't matter if it's nonsense or not. The people behind it, the people who are spending money on it, lots of money, they believe it, right? And that's all that really matters when you get into the conversation. They believe it,
Yep,
right?
yep, exactly. They believe in this mysticism or whatever you want to call it. That this is how they claim and suss out territory. And they also do it to people. By the way, this is why it's in an airport, a place of travel, a place of transit, a gateway
Yep.
to the rest of the world. That's why you would put it there, because now you're marking all these people as they travel to other places.
Well, it's
This is
definitely
very ancient ideas and rituals that have been done by every culture since forever. You put
well.
certain things in places of transit.
Well, they certainly seem to have something on some manner of trapezoid here. People have lined out. Oh, look at this right here. That's interesting. What are they doing? Huh. Hmm. Yeah, this is not helping me at all. Ley lines and stuff. I think I know I've seen maps of ley lines, what people think are ley lines and stuff like that. And here we go. Let's look at this one here. Yeah, this is not helping me because they're not using the actual names. They're using their own names for stuff. But let's see if we can figure it out. So let's see. Denver is over here. This is America. This is No, this is California, right?
Yeah,
Let me see here. Hold on a
yeah,
second.
that's California and
It's New
Mexican
Mexico.
California.
So Denver is. Oh, is
It's
that
real
Denver?
close. If it's not there,
That's Denver right here, right?
it's real. Yeah, if that ain't Denver, that's real close to Denver. Pretty sure. Let's see. Where are you at?
No, here's
Let's see. You got
Denver over
Nevada
here.
there. No,
No, here's
Denver's over
Denver.
there. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this is
yeah.
Denver. So no, I guess yeah, it is on one of the ley lines right here. It is on a ley line, yeah. But I don't know how accurate these kind of maps are. I know that the ancients, every culture on the planet has believes in ley lines. This is not a new theory. This is old stuff, and so I don't really know how realistic it is, but it kind of makes sense, really.
Absolutely. Yeah. To the people who the Illuminati and things, they do believe this stuff is real. They believe in magic. They believe in
They do.
basically magic is just power, basically, universal power that they don't understand fully, but they do know how it works to some degree, and they believe these rituals will help them tap into it. Obviously, death is a very powerful force, and that's one of the reasons there's such dark imagery. But it's very interesting. You don't have to. It doesn't matter what you believe. It doesn't matter what any individual believes. These people believe it enough to throw it in an airport. They believe it enough to throw
Yep.
it in monuments and things, that there's symbolism all over. So they're zealous enough to put it where everybody can see it, and then act like it's not there and expect everyone to just accept that. That's that's zealotry that is blinding, right? Like you, obviously people are going to question it, but they just won't talk about it.
Yeah. Well, I know when they were building Washington, they picked that territory particularly because they said they were building upon the power lines of the earth. They didn't call it ley lines, but they did. We're talking about the same thing. But it is interesting. Like it doesn't matter what we think really, and I don't know why I'm getting such a weird reception on. Why am I dropping frames? No, I'm not. I'm actually 30 FPS. It should be fine. But I think it's interesting because they believe it, and this is the most important thing when you're talking about conspiracy theories. The governmental people, the power people, the banker people, they believe this stuff. There have been examples of them actually putting actual magical spells on TV, and you could see it. It's a spell, obviously, and they said they did it to bring good luck. I mean, in one case, it was for the good luck of a baseball team, right? So
Yep.
these elite, whatever you want to call them, they believe it's real. They believe it's real. And that's all that really
Yes.
matters because they're the ones that have the money and the power to do something about it, and they seemingly they do. Mm,
Yeah, absolutely. They seem to do it all over the world too. It's very interesting how much of their symbolism you can find in
yeah.
just about every corner of the world.
Yeah, it is. And we got a lot of comments from over here in the chat as well. Eric Hawkins says, so 12 of these pieces were removed in July for renovation, but are supposedly being kept in a climate controlled storage until 2021 when the renovation is finished and will be put back in place. Well, first of all, they're not well done. They're not really good art, to be honest with you. This stuff is creepy looking. We need to get this guy on Drawn and Quartered and ask him what is up with this crap. Yeah, huh? Right? Model 3 says Revelations 3:9 is the answer you were looking for. Okay, we'll look that up, Thundera.
I
Um,
actually have it already pulled up here. I'll read it real quick. Revelations 3:9 is, "Behold, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews and are not, but do lie. Behold, I will make them to come and worship before thy feet, and to know that I have loved thee." The synagogue of Satan is supposedly another, basically an Illuminati type figure, type force, from obviously way back in Jesus era times, biblical times, which Revelation was written what, like 90 years after Jesus, I guess, but um, or 90 AD, something like that. So it's a very interesting idea. It has been going on for a very long time. Like we were talking about, this symbolism is ancient. It's beyond even our history as we recognize it academically. And the synagogue of Satan, the fake Jews, as the Bible calls them right here, um, some say these are the people that are globalists or Zionists today, and that the real Jews have been battling them forever. I don't know. I'm not going to get into that debate, but the Illuminati would definitely be part of this, part of the tie-in, because the symbolism is very similar.
mhm. Well, John Dillard is in here, and he's chastising us as usual. And he says something along the lines of, "Idiot, that's Salt Lake City, dude. We know. We found it on the map. We were looking for it." Eric Boyd says, Chester, Colorado is populated by old hippies and artists. It is possible the Denver airport has just been decorated by them and supported by their mindset. I don't know. Yeah, that's what I said too, because it looks very SJW to me, actually. Anti-white, anti-government is actually what it looks like.
Hmm.
But it is creepy. It shouldn't be in an airport. That's all I know. Um, Scott says, when I can't draw a face, I put a tree there. Awesome. Dillard again says artists are natural edge lords. Of course, they're going to do stupid, lame, edgy stuff. Yeah, no, I agree. Let's see here. Anything interesting? I see. They're just talking amongst themselves. Yeah. Anyway. The Denver International Airport is certainly interesting conversation. It's certainly creepy. I don't know if there's any actual kind of real conspiracy theories going over there. There might be, but it's definitely a creepy thing, and I don't understand why it was allowed to happen anyway. Especially specifically because it's in an airport. I mean, come on. We don't want this kind of imagery,
Hmm.
right?
No, no. Even if you don't believe in the power of imagery and of just the power of, I guess you would call it, magic. There are people out there who do, and if you believe something enough, you can make it real. Um, and this is just reality. So if somebody goes in there and it does affect them psychologically, it could cause trouble. Like I said, there is literally encyclopedias of research on this. This is why they make sure that they do things as neutral as possible in big public places, because they don't want somebody to have a psychotic episode.
Hmm. See this guy right here? This is what we call an idiot. That's
Yes.
an idiot. Mark it down. Idiot. Unbelievable.
Well, the other thing that's interesting, that we're looking at these images, how many companies have very similar imagery in their logos.
Yeah,
They'll
it's very
have,
popular.
yeah, like there's one with Starbucks. It has very interesting imagery in it. You can go around. I mean, there's people who have huge breakdowns of like thousands or hundreds of them that are just clearly pyramids, or eyes of Horus or
Oh,
something
yeah.
to that effect. It's a
Well,
very interesting thing.
that's because it's a little advertising to their fellow Illuminatis. They can go and hang out at their establishment for discounts.
Nah. Is it
Could
though,
be.
George? Or is it just people copycatting crap, dude? I mean, honestly,
A lot
especially
of
when you
it's
come
that.
to the
A lot of
Hollywood
it's
idiots and the musicians, they're not smart people, George. They're just not. You listen to these people talk like Katy Perry's always throwing up these kind of symbols, and that is one of the dumbest humans you'll ever find. I mean, she's dumb, right? A lot of them do it. They're just not smart, George. I think they're just copycatting things because they think it's cool. It's cool, right? I really think
Wait a
that's a
minute, sir.
lot of it,
Katy
George.
Perry is a genius. She's an absolute genius.
Katy Perry's a
She has
moron.
she has enough of a pair to take you on.
Yeah, well, she can enjoy that all by herself. But no, seriously, a lot of these are not. They're not smart people. Look at the things they get up on stage and say. Just look. That's the thing about the a lot. This is a completely different conversation, but a lot of these SJW types, they're really not smart. They're just followers. And they get up and say silly things like Madonna. Madonna has been saying dumb things her entire life. And because she says dumb things and gets half naked and does sexy things, people like, ooh, she's so awesome and edgy, and they give her money, right? So in a way, she is a genius, but she's not a smart human. And there's a lot of them. A lot of these people who get up are not very smart. And when you hear a few of the actors who are actually very clever people, what do you see them do? You never see them do this stuff, ever, right? Because they actually are smart. I think a lot of this stuff we're seeing here with Bono. Oh, by the way, Mr. Bono, oh, I hate this guy. But last night, my wife and I watched the new Robin Hood, and it started off pretty good. And it went downhill real fast. It's a horrible movie, and I know exactly how they screwed it up too. It's unfortunate, but one of the big mistakes they made in that movie was having Bono's daughter playing Maid Marian, right? Because literally his daughter is an actress now. She's not that bad an actress, actually. She can do the job, but she's one of the most dog butt ugly women I've ever seen. I mean, harsh, harsh, ugly, right? And she's playing Maid Marian. What? Are you kidding me? Right? One of the literary, supposedly truly attractive women, right? Because even like Guinevere wasn't putting forth as necessarily this most amazing beauty, right? Even though she's usually portrayed that way. But Maid Miriam was supposed to be gorgeous, and his daughter, I don't know her name. My wife told me that it was his daughter, but she is butt ugly, man. And you know, you keep up with your stuff there, Bono. You save them black Africans because they can't save themselves. You go for it. Did I lose everybody with that?
No, not at all. Yeah, Bono's a character.
Yeah,
He's
he's a
to put
jackass.
it as diplomatically as possible.
I don't need to be diplomatic at all. He's a jackass. He's one of those Hollywood racists. They're incredibly racist. The way they treat black people and other minority types, they're incredibly racist. They got to help that poor black person because they're so stupid and useless they can't help themselves. That's how they approach things. See me, I'm very happy to expect every other person on this planet to live up to the same expectations I have to. I don't disqualify anybody from anything. Everyone has their responsibility. And this is the problem with these progressives. They look down on these groups and they think they need to protect them because they can't do it themselves. They have no agency. They're useless and dumb. That's how they look at it. They're the real racist, and Bono was the leader, one of their leaders.
Yep,
Speaking of
absolutely.
wackadoos, Jim Carrey. Yeah, dude, that's another wackadoo. He's straight off the farm, dude.
Yeah, Jim's gone completely off the deep end in the last few years.
As
It
a
is.
Canadian, I'd like to agree with everybody that yes, we in Canada are collectively ashamed of Jim Carrey.
Yeah, well, he's kind of become a joke, and at least with Justin here. Now, I can actually give Justin a little bit of prop. I know you're saying what? I am going to give the props to this kid because he readily admits he's an idiot. He knows he is, and he doesn't hide behind. He say, "Oh no, I'm stupid as hell."
Hold on a sec. Hold on a sec. Jim Carrey came from the same part of the city as I did, Scarborough.
Uh huh.
Okay, I loved him for that. He 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 mopped floors in schools, helping his dad and all that stuff, and he became a success. It's great, but just because he's gone cuckoo at the end of his career, so to speak, is one thing. Now, Justin Bieber, his mother was on welfare. She spent everything she had to teach him music lessons so he become something. And again, just because he's come to the end of his career, it's a thing.
It is a thing. I mean, I'm just saying that Bieber is, a lot of guys hate on Bieber simply because the girls love him and he's a skinny, scrawny, thin little thing. But I'm just saying I don't hate Bieber because he openly admits that he's not a smart person and he understands that, and that in itself shows a higher level of intelligence to say Katy Perry, who continually pontificates upon crap. It's like Miley Cyrus. You ever heard? Now she's a bit smarter, but you ever hear this girl talk? Taylor Swift. I mean, come on. Listen to these girls who are just full of money. They got a ton of money, right? But listen to how they speak, and it's not just girls; it's guys too. Like Jay Z and Kanye West. I mean, God, Kanye West. Just listen to him talk. Just listen to them. They're
Okay,
not
but
smart.
hold on a
Here's
sec.
another brainiac right here. This one.
Hold on a sec. Kanye West is legitimately intelligent. Jay Z and his wife Beyonce are actually confirmed Satanists.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about musical genius. I mean, these guys have obvious skills in that right in that area. I'm talking about logical and firm states of knowledge and capability and comprehension. George is what I'm talking about. These people are wacko followers. That's what they do. And some of them just want PR, like Eminem. Now, I've heard this guy speak. Now, he's foul and vulgar as hell, but this kid is very smart, right? So, what is he doing with this stupid symbol? You see him do it all the time. He wants media attention. So, it's one or the other. I just don't think that this is actually some big conspiracy secret group. Now they might get together and do their own thing, but I think they're just a bunch of stupid kids copying stuff because they think it's cool, dude. That's what I mean. Honestly, look at this moron. Look at this idiot. I mean, what a disappointment, right? She did Hannah Montana, one of the most successful Disney shows of all time, really, and she made tons of money because the people around her daddy, Billy Ray Cyrus, was really smart about how to market her, and she made a lot of money, right? And now look at the absolute train wreck she made herself into, and now she's trying to become. She dresses really nice and like the girl next door, and she's trying to repair the damage she's done to her career because she's gotten old enough to realize that she's been a real idiot for a long time. Same scenario over and over again. Hey, David. We got to talk about him one of these days because he's Jesus. Did you know that?
Oh, Jesus is often imitated, never
He is.
duplicated.
Am I
Jesus Christ.
ranting too much, then, Daryl?
No, you're fine. Um,
Well, hold on a second. Miley Cyrus used shock value to get herself out of the Disney umbrella,
You would
and
think
yes,
so, George. You would think so. I would agree with that. I mean, we've seen other actresses try to do that, but the problem is we've also seen Miley speak. No, she fell into drugs. She fell into hard, odd, and very peculiar, vulgar sex, and she got caught up in that world. It's not now maybe a little
wait, you
bit.
say
Well, it
vulgar
started that
sex?
way, but it became something darker.
Wait a minute, you said vulgar sex?
Yes, George, vulgar
How,
sex.
how would how how would you know that?
Because she's free to tell us all about her dildo dungeons, dude. Have you ever heard her speak?
No, no. I tuned out a long time ago.
Yeah. No, no, she's happy to tell us about all of her depraved sex stuff and her like she had she was so happy her 21st birthday was a big old dildo dungeon thing and everybody came. It was so much fun. And she gave out free
Oh, good
dildos to
gosh.
everybody, George.
Were they chocolate?
I don't think so. And I don't want no chocolate dildo anyway. It's nonsense. That's worse.
Sorry,
But
can you give a straight face?
well, no, because it might sound like we're off topic, but we're certainly not. We're absolutely not off topic because all of these kids want to lay claim to being part of something like that, right? Now, I don't think they are. I don't think they're part of anything. I think they're just either they now maybe there is certain Hollywood elites that have come in and indoctrinated or recruited them, but I'm having a feeling their recruiting was either maybe for messaging, but also for some of their weird nefarious sex stuff. Because understand that's the one of the big things that floats around the Illuminati the most in modern day is very bizarre sex rituals and sexual activity,
Yep.
pedophilia, ritual sacrifice. Not actual sacrifice, I think, but just ritual sacrifice and just lots of weird stuff. Like we had what's her name, the freaking mad bat girl. Angelina Jolie, right? And she talks about
Mm.
very openly how she went in and they had a ceremony and everyone was in white robes and they had her on an altar and they pinned her legs back and tied them with these silk ribbons to an altar and they had several men come up and have anal sex with her because this was opening her Solomon's key. If you want to understand something about really weird Illuminati stuff, go read about Solomon's key. And they all had this amazing anal sex with her so they would open up her chakra and make her one of them. This is free
What?
words from her mouth, right? These are not
Who said this?
speculation. Angelina
Wait,
Jolie, dude. She's a full on
gee,
Satanist. She walked around Hollywood for years and years and years with vials of blood around her neck, right? She's an absolute creepo. And they all have these little stories of their initiations and their anal sex, and Solomon's Key comes into it a lot. And like I said, you really should go and study. I'm not going to get into that because that's deep, disgusting stuff. But if you go study what Solomon's Key is, you can understand a little bit of how these people are. Now, are these people actual Illuminati, or are they just some kind of twisted little cult that started off way back in Hollywood just to wanting to have sex parties and they became something deeper and darker? I don't know.
I would say it's the latter, but it's actually probably still connected.
It might
Most
be.
likely, all it is the Illuminati, the actual whoever they are, whatever they call themselves, the people that are that thing, use this to put out their messaging, use this to put out a narrative to control culture, but they're not a part of it. They're disposable tools. As soon as they're done with them, literally, they get rid of them. This is why famous people just disappear and they they have these crazy breakdowns and
Hmm.
things like wind up in Africa and stuff like that. Like
Yeah,
just crazy stuff happens to them
yeah,
because they're being disposed of. They don't
yeah.
matter anymore. No one
Because
will
they're
talk to
dumb
them. No one will
kids.
give them work anymore.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're
they're
dumb
done with
kids.
them basically.
But John Dillard does seem to approve. He says, high impact sexual violence. That's my kind of girl. All right, John. But no, I mean, I'm not joking. These aren't my opinions. These are things that we see and they do. And I think this is the more sillier, uglier side of Illuminati conspiracy theories. We started off very clean and simple. Who were the Illuminati? They were a real group. Where did they come from? What is their initial influences? And now we are ending here with this Hollywood celebrity version of the Illuminati, right? Because they
hold on,
all do
Chester.
this, right? Even look at
Hold on,
Michael; he's doing the same kind of covering one eye type of nonsense. Are they actually part of something, or are they just a bunch of silly people duped into something, right?
hold on, Chester. Chester, hold on a sec. Uh, question regarding the devil. Isn't the devil himself supposed to tell you the evil that he's about to do, and at that point you either willingly follow him or accept it or just reject him?
Are you
Isn't
talking
that
about the
part of his
biblical
shtick?
Satan?
Yeah.
No, he's the great deceiver, George. He doesn't tell you anything. He's about lying and cheating and hiding things. He's about subterfuge
Correct.
and obfuscation. He has nothing to do with telling you what's coming. That would be a noble act. Say the Lucifer is an evil thing that lies constantly and cannot be trusted. So no. But then again, this
Okay.
has nothing to do with Satanism, dude. I mean, I heard Thundero say it
No,
a couple times. They're not
I'm
Satanists;
just curious
they're
because one of the key things you
Saturnists,
said
dude.
all night. Also, one of the key. I'm curious because one of the key things you said all night is that these Illuminati, or this entire night, so to speak, everything you we talked about is that they openly talk about what they're doing, and here's what we're going to be doing. The next set of evil things we're going to be doing. It's like, and they do it, and no one's there to even challenge it. It's just accepted, and it's happening.
Yeah, but once again, George, I do think you're misplacing the concept of a person who would claim themselves to be a Satanist and a person who is a Saturnist. Now, I understand that a lot of this has been coined off of similar things in the past and has become a modern thing, like saying the word demon. Right? They're not demons; they're daemons. And a daemon was just talking about the odd creations of the gods. If we go back and look at the older version of them, it was just Enki and Inchida and Herzog trying to perfect the man, and they made many mistakes along the way, right? But Damon has become known as demon today, and it's a completely different thing from what it originally was. And a lot of this stuff is coming. Satanism, modern Satanism, has nothing to do with Satan, right? It's more about freedom and anarchy is really what it is. But the Saturnists are the worshippers of Moloch, and they've been around a long time. And this is where this Illuminati starts getting connected to that. Now, I believe that the original Illuminati was nothing of the sort. I think they were actually the SJWs of the 18th century. Right. And what they were doing was they wanted to destroy religion, they wanted to destroy government, they were hippies. It's really what they were. They were socialists, early socialists, and they wanted to do that by breaking down religion, breaking down government through money. And I think they had a lot of success because there are hints and rumors that people like Darwin and the Roosevelts and several other groups were actually part of them. Right, and they were part of this breakdown of, particularly of the Catholic Church, hardcore. Right, it was a continuation of what of the Reformation that happened in the early 17th century, and led it had been continued on even into modern day. And there are many books written about it. So I think what the Illuminati was, in particular, maybe has become, has nothing to do with the nonsense that is this Satanism, this Saturnism, this Hollywood crap. They're not related. Not saying it's not dangerous, because I think it's probably more dangerous, but they're not related, and that's the point I'm trying to make. Why I'm sticking on it.
Okay, understood. I have no idea any of this. I was just trying to find some reasonable thinking behind just the sheer, where's it, arrogance, the monumental ego of projecting or telling the public, "Hey, we're going to be doing this evil thing here," and you know, live with it.
That is a something that they supposedly do, and it's part of their rituals. But it isn't a satanic ritual. It is a Saturnist
It's
ritual.
eternal record. Yeah,
It's
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, it has something to do with time and fate,
Mhm.
things of this nature. They think if they don't put it out there first, it won't happen, or it'll happen wrong, or it's evil then if they don't warn people. If they do warn people, it's not evil. There's different interpretations of how they look at it, but yes, that is something that they allegedly do. It is a belief they allegedly have, that they have to put it out there first, even encoded, but that has to be out there before they can do anything negative in the negative sphere. Um, the interesting thing is, like he was saying, is they're not technically Satanists. They don't worship what we would call the devil, what
No,
Christianity would call the devil. They worship a god that's actually older, at least chronologically, from what we understand, than that, which would be Moloch or Baal or whatever you want to call him. Um, he's one of the oldest recorded deities that there is, actually.
sure.
And so their rituals are far beyond anything a Satanist would even do. I would, if anything, Satanists, especially modern Satanists, if there is a connection, they would probably be the tool of the Illuminati, not the other way around.
You know what? Interesting that you said this. Here's a theory regarding they openly talking about or projecting their plans. Could this be a form of communication to sleeper cells all over the world?
No, no. No, no need for it. There are much more direct and simple ways to do that. It's not. And I know a lot of people love that concept, and I think a lot of these idiots that are following me do that kind of stuff because they think it's cool. I really telling you, a lot of this stuff that gets thrown on top of the Illuminati is just people acting like they think they're cool, like these idiots right here. Look at this. Look at them. Look at them next to each other.
Could they? Okay, then here's a theory that is formulated based upon all this. Now, is could the Illuminati be just a monumental red herring, and the real Illuminati has moved its base of operations, so to speak, over to the left, while everyone's focused to the right?
Well, maybe. It could be. I mean, like we said in the beginning, there are many Illuminati. You have the Tri group here in Asia. You have the Bilderberg groups, and I'm sure there are many, many, many other groups, right? I mean, the
Oh
Rothschilds
yeah.
and those other families that control what almost 100% of all the debt on this planet. You don't think
hmm
there's conspiracy around them? You don't think they're planning stuff?
Yeah, the Rothschild family is estimated to be worth, the full family, not just one of them, is estimated to be worth $500 trillion in assets,
Well,
which
yeah,
is
that's
an
right.
absurd
Let
amount of money.
So what
let
you're
me
saying is our
but
entire economy
clarify
is
that statement though.
it's a pocket change.
Hold on, George. We got to clarify that though, Thundera. That is $500 trillion in liquid assets. That is not
Yes,
wealth. That is liquid land, things like that. That's not gold. That's not money. That is land. Now you
correct.
do understand that is more than the world's GDP, right? The world's
Yeah,
GDP.
I do.
May I repeat that? That's their liquid assets. Who knows what their actual value is, dude?
Right. Yeah, that's what we can track just by looking, like observational.
Mhm.
Um, but there's no telling what they have stashed away. And
Yeah,
this is what I've been waiting to get to, actually. The point of the modern day interpretations of the Illuminati, that obviously it means the enlightened or the enlightened ones, whatever you want to call it, is that they believe themselves to be ferrying and to be guarding forbidden knowledge, secret knowledge, knowledge that the humanity isn't ready for or should never have, and that's hence the name. They also believe that their organization is literally the enlightened ones. They're superior to other people,
yeah.
and this is why they must control. They don't, and some say dominate, some say just control.
Hmm.
I would venture to guess that's probably, if there is a faction, that's probably two of the major things. The split is how they maintain their power. Is it through
Yeah.
domination or is it through subversion?
And they also think that they are connected to the old bloodlines. They believe that
Yep.
completely, right? And of course, the old bloodlines meaning they're half god, right? And of course, all the royalty in
Yes.
Europe is supposedly connected to that and stuff. Now, is it true or not? Maybe there's some ancient truth to it, but there's certainly nothing more than human. But they believe that too. So there is. Then this is
Yes.
probably why that so much of the ancient mysticism is part of what they do, and they truly believe in magic and spells and stuff. Is because they are also. It's kind of a important to their whole core belief. They believe they are related by blood to the gods, right? And therefore, that if magic has to be real, or there's nothing to them, they have no importance to them. So this is, I think, part of the reason why they stick on this magic stuff so much.
Exactly. They also, according to Alex Jones, who has studied this topic probably more than anybody on the planet, in all honesty, besides the people within it, they believe they are in contact with extra dimensional beings, or multi-dimensional beings, whatever you want to call it.
Mhm.
Beings not literally not from our reality, that are from higher dimensions or lower dimensions,
Sure.
however
Now
they
you're getting
phrase
into
it.
David Icke again. Um,
Yep.
the interesting thing about David Icke is there's another researcher who I actually have quite a bit of respect for. His name is Michael Tsarian, and Tsarian is a very very good researcher, and he has some amazing books. But in recent years, he's actually moved over more to the transdimensional thinking. And he and David Icke aren't too far abreast of each other in their thoughts, actually. It's kind of
Yep.
interesting that someone who I actually respect Tsarian as a researcher, that he's actually gone over that direction. It's very interesting why he would do that. I was looking for that David
Well,
Icke picture again.
What Ike's doing largely is he's just reading some of the things they write
Probably.
and extrapolating from that what they believe and what they claim. Now, obviously, the lizard stuff is I don't even know. That's a whole other rabbit hole. But he does say things like this. He said things like Alex, like if you watch Alex Jones in the recent interview he gave with Joe Rogan, he talks about it in depth that this is what these
Yeah.
people believe. They believe in 12 dimensions of reality. That's what our
Yeah.
reality exists with, and they're in contact with higher dimensions, and that's what they're trying to do is
Mhm.
bring their minds up to that level, to ascend to that level.
Yeah, but I get that, and and they do believe these things. There's a lot of this kind of thinking going on behind the scenes, and understand there are a lot of books that have been written by these Illuminati-esque people over the decades. I mean, excuse me, over the centuries, the past couple of
Yep.
centuries, particular, and they're very clearly state in those books what they wanted to do. And you know the shocking thing, everything they stated they wanted to do in those books, they have succeeded in. They talked about
Yep.
World War
So
One,
far.
World War Two. They talked about all of these things that they wanted to get done. We're talking like 200 years ago. They were putting books out
Hmm.
talking about this, and this is in the public. It's not hidden at all, right? That you can go read those books. And they said exactly what they wanted to get done in three phases. And we're sitting in the middle of phase three, and phase one and two they perfectly pulled off.
Yep.
And
And
you
then
can't
you
say there's not a
had
connection.
yeah, then you had people start to pay attention.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was a slip up on their part, or if it was just hubris, or if it was just smart people figured it out. Um, Guys like, I mean, people can talk all they want about Alex Jones, but he really has studied this stuff ad nauseum. Like he can sit there and tell you all sorts of nonsense. The problem is he knows so much and he's got so much ADHD that it's hard for him to stay focused. But he's a font of knowledge on this topic, and
He is.
he's even said that they were very close to whatever their goal was, whatever it is, whatever you believe it is or whatever they believe it is. But this modern push again has actually kind of pushed back against them,
Hmm.
just because knowledge is power and people knowing what they're doing is slowing them down. So whether or not that's true or not, that could all just be nonsense. But it could not be too. It very well could be that maybe they are tapped into some mystical higher power that the rest of the world kind of knows is there but doesn't know what it really is, and maybe they do have the more knowledge of it than we do. You never
Maybe.
know. It's very possible.
But anyway, um, whew, that was deep. That was a dive.
Yeah, it was deep. This whole thing about DHT, um, beyond Alex Jones, has been reported that everyone who has actually taken this drug has reported to have the same vision of a of a similar looking demon standing in front of a forest, a path to a forest, and I find it highly unlikely that multiple people would have the exact same vision.
Yeah, no, the DHT thing is interesting as well. I think that's getting a little bit too far afield of Illuminati, though. What did I miss? Here it is. Okay. Yep, Moloch. Anyway, but I think we've beaten this horse to death. Pretty sure. And we did it in a timely fashion as well. Let me come over here and
Sure.
bring this down here and come back over here to this. Yes, here we go. But that was a fun conversation, and we did try to keep up the chat best we can. We lost you guys a little bit there in the end, but I've been seeing you guys kind of basically just mocking or picking on Rick Piper, which is both fine. But it is a very interesting conversation, but I personally believe that the original Illuminati group and the things that are going on today are not necessarily related. There might be some fragment of that original organization that's still involved in high power, but I also don't believe that all the nonsense we see in the press, particularly coming out of Hollywood, has anything to do with it, even though they desperately want it to. I think it's a separate thing. I think it's kind of this weird, silly, twisted version of Saturnism. And because they have money and power, they put a lot of imagery into our life because they think they're following something. Now, do they have some insight we don't know of? Is there actually another level of intelligence going on within these groups in Hollywood, like Thundero suggested? Maybe. But I think a lot of it, especially the peripheral, like the celebrities and stuff, I think it's just absolute silly nonsense, personally.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. I think most of the people that always get, like your Jay Z's and these guys are in the Illuminati. No, very surprised if they were in any kind of level of power beyond completely superficial.
Yeah.
They're not smart enough for one. I mean, the elites are smart. There's a reason they're the elites. There's a reason they've been there for centuries. Some of them, they're smart. They know what they're doing. They're very good at it. Unfortunately, for people who want to be rid of them,
Hmm.
and they would know a tool like media when they see it, and that's all it would be. They would
Yeah,
never
sure.
let people in that field into the echelon, into the upper echelon. It just wouldn't happen.
And the
It's not.
evidence for that is the fact that so many of these celebrities get used up and thrown out,
Yep, just get
right?
discarded
They do.
once they're done with them.
And I think it's unfortunate because you get a lot of these wide-eyed, hungry young people who want to be famous. And we've made this kind of comment: big difference between other acting establishments in other countries and in America. It's all about fame, and they get abused. They get sexually abused. They get their bodies are abused with drugs and other radical things. And it's a real sad and disturbing thing. And it's a problem, and we know it's a problem. This has been being talked about for a long time, particularly with pedophilia and pederastia, which seems to be the bigger thing. And that's kind of weird to me. Why so many of these Hollywood types are more into boys than girls? It's an odd thing, because a pederast is a having sex with a boy, right? Pedophilia is talking about children in general. But nevertheless, it's we do have the people like Corey Feldman and the boy who played Frodo and the boy who played Spider-Man and the boy who played Harry Potter. All of them having their experiences. Now, some of them escaped it because they had parents who were paying attention, and some of them didn't. But no matter what the reality is, these Hollywood elites are abusing. And this is what I would say. Mel Gibson got himself in a lot of trouble for saying, the effing Jews, right? And he said some other things about black people too, I guess. But he got blacklisted. But the thing about that is, we know, even though they keep denying, it, I don't know why they bother, but we know that the Jews control Hollywood. We know this. This is not a
Yes.
secret at all. And the problem is, the American Jew, they have absolutely discarded their religion. They are secular
Yes.
to the core. There's nothing about them that is actually religious. There are no relation between them and the Jews that are in Israel. And we can have an argument about that. They're not the real Jews. I get that argument. But the American Jews are nothing more than a nameplate. And they have gone so far away from their religion that they've actually embraced darker things, particularly in Hollywood, because a lot of these culprits that are coming out have been doing these nasty things for a long time. And these people that get up in this Me Too movement that's going on, which is coming out of like Harvey Weinstein, and particularly really started out of that angry woman who was mad at Woody Allen. His ex-wife is really where it kicked off, and then Weinstein got pulled in and stuff like that. But they know this stuff has been going on a long time, and now they're going to sit and bitch about it, and they've done nothing about it in the past. It's disgusting to me, right? Anyway,
Yeah. Absolutely. It's a perversion of what they're supposed to be believing and what they're supposed to be following. It is interesting because we were talking about the synagogue of Satan, which is probably what we're talking about right now.
yeah,
Um, they are a deceptive version of Judaism, of Jews. But there's also, you can even find these people, they exist, of very orthodox Jews who 100% resist what you're talking about right now, the
yeah.
secularization of Judaism, of Jewish people. And now it's gone to the point where it's full atheism and it's just complete degeneracy in many circles. Um, and this is a battle that's been waging, obviously, at least since Jesus' time, because it talks about it directly in Revelation. Um, so it's very interesting to watch it play out. And like you said, they do have control of Hollywood. The funny thing is they only deny it when somebody says that isn't a Jew, because they'll brag about it when they're not, when they're just they're joking, quote unquote. They'll brag about how they control Hollywood and this and that. But then if somebody who isn't a Jew says it, then no, that's a conspiracy theory. It's like, what are you
It's
talking about?
anti-Semitism.
Yeah. I didn't say it was a bad thing necessarily. I just said it is. It's just an
Yeah.
observation.
Well, and also we do need to make a very clean distinction between the nonsense that's going on in Hollywood, because, like I said, they are ultra secular. And even I would say they've gone beyond secular to worshiping magical thoughts, right? And a separation between that and the Zionists of Europe. The Zionists are
Yes.
dangerous, right? The average Jew is just a person, right? But a
Correct.
Zionist is a dangerous thing, and they are a major threat to everything and anything. And they've always been so because they have an agenda and they will do whatever it takes to make that agenda come true. But I do want there to be, from as far as this show's point of view, and to all those who may be listening, I am absolutely separating the concept of the secular American Hollywood Jew and the Zionist of Europe. Please do keep that in mind.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
So, anything else, guys?
No,
Nope.
no.
Nope.
This has been very illuminating. No, no pun intended. And I also want to say the Parrot Brigade is real. Long live the Parrot Brigade.
Yeah, I've seen you guys over here working up new conspiracy theories of your own. Awesome. Good for you. Yeah. Hopefully, it will
I do
get
have
rid
to
of this
say
Raven thing.
that I do have to say that Eagle 43 is a vile blasphemer, and he will be punished by the mighty hammer of Thor himself.
Well, there you go.
That's all.
There you go. It's been done. It's been said. But anyway, guys, thank you very much for joining us. We had a lot of fun. We went 2 hours. We got a lot of you in here, so that is awesome. We thank you guys for coming, spending your Sunday evening with us, and talking a little bit about the Illuminati. And we're having just a good fun time with it. And but I think there was a lot of illumination, as George's pun was made. There was. I think we talked about it in general. We laid it out. Hopefully, we gave you guys some information you might not have known out about. I know a lot of you guys are actually well informed and you pay attention to things that are going on. So, but maybe some of the stuff we said you didn't know, you hadn't heard about it. Maybe it will get you to think about it and talk about things amongst yourselves, because it's a lot of fun, and that's why we're doing this TFE T show, because conspiracy theories are great fun. They're very entertaining. There's a lot of things to talk about, and we're doing this in that light. We're not sitting here being so ultra serious, but we're giving ourselves a format where we can have fun and talk freely about it. You notice that we sat here and talked about ancient gods and all that kind of stuff very freely and openly. And once again, it doesn't matter what I believe; it's what they believed, and that's basically what we're putting down. We're having fun with it. But thank you for joining us today. Do keep in mind tomorrow we will be doing our normal run of things. Of course, we have comic book news. We also have John Dillard's D&D game that was just running on Mondays at about 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We also have Bugbear's Basement, where we doing all kind of different things. We have our shows coming out next week, but do keep in mind that Fan Speak next week will be on the Saturday, not the Friday. We're shifting that over because of my responsibilities. So we will Fan Speak from now on will be a Saturday show, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Beyond that, thank you very much. It was a lot of fun having you in here, and hope to see you back again. And I say this every time, but I'm going to keep saying it. If you are interested in these kind of topics, come back and talk to me in my links just down below and say, Chester, I want to come on the show. And I will put you on the show. Seriously. We want to hear what you have to say. Come have fun with us, man. Get up here and talk to the peeps, because it's a hell of a lot of fun. But beyond
It
that,
sure is.
thank you very much. And
Before before you go, real quick,
uh
Matthew Gervais wants to know what's next week. We don't know yet. If you
I
guys
do.
have any topic,
I know. I
never
know what we
mind.
should talk
Chester
about.
knows. Never mind.
I think we
So
should
I'm
talk
just gonna
about.
shut up.
Maybe you should. Yeah. There. I was able to talk on Thundero. I'm going to get in trouble later, though. I guarantee it. But how about the moon?
That's not a conspiracy. I can look outside right now and see the moon. I don't even
Well,
know what you're
you
talking
know
about.
what I mean. There's a lot of conspiracy around the moon, dude. How about the moon? What do you think?
Sure. Why not?
Sure, that sounds good. Or I can throw a suggestion. How about talking about the five richest families on the planet, which includes, of course, the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers.
Well, we did touch on that a
And
little bit today. We certainly could get into that, but it'd
yeah,
be
you know
very
what? Let's
similar.
yeah, let's talk about the moon. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
Let's
yeah.
talk about the moon. You know, cleanse the palate, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, we can come back to that because that's really a more in-depth conversation of the same conversation we just had. It's just more focused. But yeah, no, we're going to do the moon. We're going to talk about the moon next week, and there are a lot of weird conspiracies around it. Actually, some of them are ridiculous, and some of them are thought-provoking. Actually, and Joshua Hughes says the moon is
Oh,
flat.
and everyone in the chat should know that there's a lot of video evidence of what we're going to be talking about next week regarding the moon.
Oh yeah,
Lots of video evidence.
oh yeah, and maybe we'll actually throw a couple of David Icke quotes in. That would be fun.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
The lizards are coming.
The lizards
The
are
lizards
coming.
are coming.
Just remember, he Jeebus. Later, guys.
That's right. Bye.